we had, people were asking if we could have a session on puppetry. So we've invited the wonderful Karen Torley, master puppeteer of Banyan Theatre here in Derry in Northern Ireland, Dr. Matt Smith, who probably one of the, there aren't that many people who would have a PhD in puppetry, but Matt Smith has a puppetry and claims to have invented the term applied puppetry. And then we have Dotun Osunsanya, terribly sorry if I'm mispronouncing it, Dotun Osunsanya.
Perfectly pronounced, you got it right.
I said it correctly?
Yeah.
Oh, thanks. I'm getting better. Who's with NNIRCEP Nigeria. Do you want to talk a bit about who you are, Jerry, and what NNIRCEP is?
Yeah, NNIRCEP is the National Association of Nigerian Theatre Arts Practitioners. And so Dotun Osunsanya is recently retired from the National Council for Arts and Culture as a director, and is a fellow of the Nigerian Theatre Arts Practitioners, basically. So that's what it is. And of course, he's generally known as a puppeteer, one of those in the field in Nigeria. Yeah.
Fantastic. So, and because we have so many people today, we can't quite do what we usually do, which is introduce everybody one by one and talk a bit about themselves. But after we hear from, and also because we've got 3 guests this time, often we've only had 1 guest, so it's been a bit more of a conversation. But after each of the puppeteers, well, after Matt and Karen and Dotun sort of show us, tell us what they're going to show us and tell us, we have conversations about their work. Yeah. And then we'll have a quick conversation at the end to see what, if anybody would like to do something else next time. All right.
Okay. Matt, as you would probably notice, there is a little bit of problem, I guess, in terms of timing. As you can see, okay. I just flipped at the flyer again. I see, I don't know if there is a time change, but at the time we set the time, there's a 1 hour difference. So it's supposed to be 11 for you and 12 for here. Yes. So we are 11 now. That's why probably there are not a lot of the Nigerians on.
Did Nigeria?
Yeah,
you guys in Nigeria
by timing there is this 1 hour difference. So it's a huge gulf. Unfortunately, I don't know how that happens.
When did you put your clocks? When did you put your clocks back, Jerry?
What?
When did you put your clocks back in Nigeria?
I don't know. I don't know. So probably it's my mistake. Probably there's been a change of whatever, but it's in. So.
Okay. Well, all right. So there's a bunch of people in Nigeria who are going to be joining in an hour.
Actually, 2 just joined.
Just after me.
Stream them all out. So I've just done the back end to say we are on. I'm sure some of those who already registered, who are ready, will join us. I mean, already we have people from South Africa in the house. Yes, 2 from South Africa.
Okay.
And 1 from Nigeria. So I guess we don't have to wait too long. Yeah, so I'm having someone else from Uganda here. So.
Right. Well, do you want to, sorry, I'm going to sit down. Do you want to wait a bit longer? Maybe we could do a bit of what we do do and ask people to introduce themselves.
We can say
some are already coming in. I mean, you know how we do it. I think that we don't have to wait for too long. Can we do 11:30?
An 11:30 start for the presentation?
Yeah, so we start from officially from 11:30. So whoever is joining is not missing too much for 12.
Okay. Between now and 11:30, should we ask some people to introduce themselves? Because yes. I'm fascinated.
I think that we should do that, catching up, meeting up while we wait.
Okay, fair enough. Well, yeah. Good. We're keeping the original ethos. Okay, well, so I mentioned Christine Cowan to you before. Christine, you're next on my slides. I told Jerry that you're a drama therapist based in Belfast. Do you want to say a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, sure, no problem. I mean, my link with puppetry really goes back to my childhood, and I used hand puppets and string puppets for myself as projected devices. Actually used it in therapy yet, but I love puppets, and part of my long essay when I was training was on puppets and stories. My only other claim to fame really is that I have actually been in a bread and puppet performance in America.
Right.
That's about it, I'm afraid. So as I say, drama therapist in private practice and academic mental health tutor in Queen's University.
Queen's University Belfast, yeah. And you haven't used puppetry in drama therapy practice?
Not yet in drama therapy, no.
I know it does happen though, doesn't it?
Oh, very much so, and I would intend to do it, yes, given the opportunity, yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. Right, thanks, Christine. And what about you, Philip Arojah? Hi, I'm Matt. How you doing? You want to sort of say a bit about yourself?
Good morning. My name is Philip Arojah. I'm an assistant lecturer at Department of Theatre at Torley State University, Anigba. I've known Jerry, and we have been working together since 2019, when he brought theatre performance to my school. I was the first person he contacted, and since then we have been working together, and it's nice knowing everybody, and it's nice being part of this program.
Thank you, Philip. So I didn't quite catch the name of the university where you're assistant professor of theatre. What was the name of the university again?
Kogi State University.
Kogi State.
Kogi State University, Anigba. It's in Nigeria.
Yeah, Anigba. Thank you very much, Philip. Next on my screen is Philip Ruddock. We'll go from one Philip to another. We'll go from Nigerian Philip to Philip. Hi, Philip. You want to tell people about yourself?
I'm Phil Ruddock. I'm an independent commercial artist. I'm living in Derry. I used to live in Donegal, so I've been in Ireland since the early 90s. And I'm a designer and builder of carnival, puppetry, anything on a stage. Really, if someone says to me, can you make something big and mad? I'll go, oh yeah, please. So really, that's where I come from.
Yeah. I can test the big and mad. Philip and I have worked together on a few carnival performances, which have involved quite a few big, mad, giant puppets and other things.
Lots of music, lots of high energy, lots of stress, and lots of fun.
Yeah, yeah. Usually outdoors for some crazy reason in Ireland, outdoors in the rain.
Art in the rain.
Art in the rain. Thank you very much. And we've had Philip, and now could we ask Philemon Odiambo? I'm sorry if I mispronounced the name. Is it Philemon?
Thank you very much, Murat. My name is Philemon Odiambo. I work with the Kenya Institute of Puppet Theatre as the director.
The Kenyan
Matt,
Institute.
are you hearing me?
I am hearing you clearly, Philemon. You said you were the director of the Institute of Puppet Theatre.
Yes, I'm also the president of UNIMA Kenya. UNIMA is basically a union of puppeteers around the world. And basically, I work in the area of puppetry for social change. And most of our projects are supported by NGOs, basically donor-funded projects. Although we also work with several universities incorporating puppet theater, particularly in Department of Literature and Performing Art. Like we've just signed a new agreement with University of Nairobi to support the introduction of puppetry as a performing art element in the Department of Literature and Performing Art.
Wow, fantastic. That's great. And do you know Matt Smith? He's in UNIMA, I think, and he did a project in Kenya recently.
Matt Smith?
Matt Smith, who's going to talk to us today.
Hello,
Matt, you there?
Yeah.
Have you met Philemon before?
No. I'm in British UNIMA, but I'm not very active in the international UNIMA. But yeah, we've never met before, but that's brilliant. That's amazing. What a
who
contact.
Was it you were working with in Kenya, Matt?
So we were working on a project called the ACT project was the last one that we did, but I was also working on a lung health in Mukuru project, and they used puppets in that. But I made the puppets, and they just kind of they took the trip over to Kenya, and without, and then the group of performers, the artists, just made work there. So yeah, that's amazing contact. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that was our team.
Yeah.
That was my team in Mukuru.
That was Philemon's team in Nakuru.
Yes.
There.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. And I hope the puppets flew first class.
Wow.
The next person on my screen is Sarah Lyle. Sarah Lyle, how you doing? You want to sort of introduce yourself and tell us a bit about yourself and why you're here?
Yeah, I don't know how I ended up here, but this is just brilliant. It's so exciting. I think it was shared onto the Equity NI group by a guy called Stephen Beggs, who I'd be friendly.
Hi, Stephen.
Yeah, who I'd be friendly with. So when I only saw it like yesterday and registered for the call straight away. I live in Northern Ireland. I'm a theatre maker and puppeteer, and yeah, I make plays. We've actually adapted a lot of our work for Zoom-based theatre, and we've presented puppet shows on live interactive Zoom platform into schools in Northern Ireland this year.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, I'm also a puppeteered Cowbella in Pajanimals with the Jim Henson Company, which played internationally.
Cowbella in Pajanimals.
Yeah, yeah. It was shot here in Belfast, which was brilliant. So yeah, I'm a theatre maker, and I know of Banyan through Amy McKelvey at Ards and North Down Borough Council. So I've seen some of Karen's work, which is beautiful.
Great, thank you.
There you go. Well, look at this. We're bringing everybody together. It's like throwing the best party in the world, puppetry party. Thank you, Sarah. And next on my screen, I have Ngozi. Is that how you pronounce it? Ngozi?
You got it right. Ngozi.
Yeah.
Ngozi.
Yes.
Ngozi.
Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hi, Ngozi. Have you much to do with puppetry yourself?
No. I'm a visual artist. I'm a Chinese language teacher and student here in Nigeria. And I'm a writer and I'm a painter, and I do one or two poetic write-ups here and there, yes.
Poetry.
It's nice to have, yes, I write poetry. I teach Chinese language, Mandarin specifically. And then I'm also a Chinese language student. And I'm also a painter, yes.
I see behind you on the wall, Ni Hao Ma.
Oh!
That's the only Mandarin I know. I just read it on your wall.
Yes, I just had a class. I just completed a class session with 3 students from Lagos. So we just completed the class via Zoom, and then I just logged on to the.
Wow, it's good to have.
To this program.
Did you share some poetry with us before, Ngozi?
No, I haven't. I've only just participated, but I've never shared any.
All right, okay. We've had some, when we started out with, it was mainly the students. There are our students from Ulster University, and most of the other students were Dr. Ola's students from, there were lots of different universities in Nigeria, but we shared some wonderful poetry that had been written by other in Nigeria as well as by the students themselves, and I was blown away by how active and vibrant and important the poetry is.
Yes, I was part of that meeting. The last meeting shared by Mr. Jerry, I was part of that meeting. It was very, very, very wonderful. Very wonderful.
Very wonderful. We like very wonderful. And I can see sheltering. Is it a hood or a blanket? Lalu Mokuku. Lalu.
Oh, hello.
Hello, Lalu.
My name is Lalu. I'm in South Africa. I facilitate teaching and learning at Rhodes University, focusing on applied theatre. So because it's an umbrella body, it gets to touch on playback theatre, forum theatre, etc., etc. Interesting in love, actually, in this particular week, I am teaching on theatre of the oppressed. So I always I find that we need to probably find a way in which some of these very these subjects we could introduce puppets. But I was drawn to the marionette, and I'm looking actually for partnership to see how we can use puppetry or marionettes in applied theatre spaces, just to give young students that opportunity. And I recently met Jerry through ASITEJ. I am ASITEJ South Africa chair, and I'm also in the ASITEJ International executive for now, just elected right now. Yeah. So I'm very happy to this community. Thank you.
Well, Lalu, I've got to say that's another amazing coincidence, because Matt Smith and Karen Torley and I were in Cape Town in South Africa when they had the big ASITEJ festival a couple of years back. Was it?
Oh, 2017.
2017.
Did you see Animal Farm? The production.
We did see Animal Farm. Were you in Animal Farm?
I'm the co-producer of Animal Farm.
That was amazing. That was one of the best shows I've seen. That was fantastic.
Oh, and then since then, I met somebody from the UK and we had a partnership. So last year, we produced a play that we co-wrote called Dipalo, that is dealing with issues of religion. And we met at the conference.
Yeah.
There you go.
She also registered to be here. I saw her. She also registered to be here today, so I guess she will join us.
Oh, the colleague who wrote the Dipalo.
Yes.
Ginny. Oh, that's nice. But I have to say that there's a Jerry would know about the meeting that we are preparing for event. So I've just been called by PM at 12:30, but I'll be back.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, and I was going to say as well, when Matt Smith and Karen Torley and I were in Cape Town, it was part of an applied puppetry network. There was a puppetry to do applied drama and theatre of the oppressed and all of that stuff. And we met some wonderful people when we were there who were doing community-based puppetry in the McGregor Township as well, wasn't it? What do you call them? There was Arojah Marnavek and Sarah.
Mother's Tongue Project. I can't remember.
Mother's Tongue Project.
Sarah Matchett.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Sarah Matchett, Arojah Marnavek, and the Mother's Tongue Project, which involving McGregor Township and one other township, and there were community members from there, and the fellows from Hand Puppetry. They were, so how Hands were collaborating with the people in the McGregor Township and Sarah and Arojah to do what you're talking about, applied puppetry with communities in those areas. So that's fantastic. Look. There is a providence in humanity, isn't there? Well, fantastic to see you, Lalu, and congratulations. I got to say, Anna was a very, very powerful piece of theatre. It was worth the trip to Cape Town on its own. And then who else do we have here who we haven't heard from yet? Rose Kane. Rose Kane, you want to sort of turn your camera on and introduce yourself?
Hi.
Hi, Rose.
Hi, I'm Rose. I'm a drama student at Ulster University. I'm Matt's student.
One of your students. I'm one of your lecturers, and you're one of our.
My favorite lecturer, Matt.
I get you're not going to get extra marks now.
My interests are primarily in socio-political theatre for social change. But I've also been fascinated with puppets since it was like the second kind of theatre I ever saw outside of pantomime. So, and a lot of some of the most incredible work I've ever seen was done with puppetry. So any chance to learn more from people who do it, I'm in.
Fantastic. Thank you, Rose. And Rose was recently involved in a collaboration we're doing with Bath Spa University, where we're using applied drama to explore issues of history and so on with students in England through Helena Enright, a colleague of ours who's an applied theatre lecturer from Ireland in Bath. So we're doing that today. And then Dr. Ola in the house. Are you able to turn your camera and microphone on, Ola?
Hello everyone.
Hi, Dr. Ola.
Hi, sorry I wasn't able to turn on my video right now, but
Okay.
I hope to do that very soon when I get to the office. Yeah. Yeah, so
tell people about yourself.
All right. So I'm Dr. Ola Ifakme. I lecture at the Department of Theatre and Performing Arts, Faculty of Communication, Bayero University, Kano here in Nigeria. I'm also a theater for development practitioner, and I've always been fascinated with how puppetry could be used to draw in especially children in the negotiations and interactions around change, development, you know, and all that. So yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Thank you, Ola. And Ola,
you forgot to mention that he's my lecturer, my HOD.
is he lecturing you, Jerry?
You forgot to mention that.
Have you gone back to? Have you gone back to school, Jerry?
Well, part-time.
Part-time? Are you going to do a PhD?
Sure.
Is this your part-time PhD? Excellent. Well, and just so the rest of you know, Ola has been a sort of a founder member of this thing. So from the very first session, it was me, Jerry, Ola, and I think Auntie Shine was there at the beginning as well, wasn't she, Sean? Yeah, she's coming. She's coming now. Do you think she'll be here soon? And we have somebody called Lookman Sanusi. Lookman or Lookman? Lookman, do you want to introduce? Lookman?
I think it's a network thing. It's been in and out and in and out. Network maybe. But this is not Nigerian network because Lookman is in the UK, so.
We have network issues here too. Don't you worry. Network issues. Incompetent governments. You know, we got the whole thing.
Yeah.
Here in Northern Ireland, we've had widespread civil conflict. You know, it's common.
Okay, Lookman is back. Oh, see, he's still.
Lookman is back.
Okay.
Hello, Lookman.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
We can hear you now.
Right. Sorry, I'm joining so late. My name is Lookman Sanusi. I'm here in the United Kingdom. I should say I'm one of the foremost, well, don't let me claim anything, but I started puppetry back in Nigeria in the 1989. So I'm well known with puppetry in Lagos, for instance. My name is synonymous with puppetry, but I shuttle between the UK and Nigeria. I've got a theater for young people in Lagos, and I used to work with the Unicorn Theatre here in the UK. Between 2007 and 2010. So puppetry has been my forte. I use it to educate, young people. I wouldn't call them children. And then I moved to schools to start teaching how to build and, manipulate, puppets. And I've had some production using puppetry. At the moment, I'm hoping to do a collaboration with a company in Canada to have a performance of Pinocchio, the African version in Nigeria pretty soon. So when I saw this program come up, I thought, okay, at least I can learn one or two things and then maybe contribute my voice to the ongoing discussion. So yeah, this is me in short.
Well, welcome, Lookman. And I would say, from the sounds of it, there's no reason not to call yourself one of the foremost practitioners of puppetry in Nigeria. That's a great, that's a great CV you've got there. Do you want to do the first presentation? Well, we won't try to put you on the spot, but as we say,
right.
These events.
I don't mind. I don't mind. It depends on what you want me to talk about.
well, these events are kind of generally fairly conversational.
Yeah.
Right.
Most of the time, it's basically being a conversational with people reading a bit or showing a little bit and so on.
Right.
So, because we have a few more people, we're going to have Karen, and we are going to have Matt, and we're going to have Dotun speaking formally. But in and around all that, plenty of conversation. I don't know.
Right.
I know Matt and Karen anyway. They're fairly relaxed people. So if their presentations become conversations, that's probably cool too. Isn't that all right, Karen and Matt?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
Fab.
In fact, I know Karen much prefers a conversation to a
Very true.
I still remember you gripping my arm when you were supposed to go on in Cape Town to talk about your thing. Absolutely brilliant at doing shows, but a bit nervous talking to people.
Okay, so I don't mind if you want me to open the conversation and talk about my experience as a puppeteer in Lagos and down here in the UK. So yeah, I don't mind. Like I said, it started 1989. Well, slightly before then, I think 1988, I went to school with a puppet in hand, you know, just to entertain children. And then a group of us came together 1989 to start, led by the wife to the cultural attaché, US cultural attaché, Norma Robertson, put a few of us together, a Canadian, Kim Collier, who is a big name now in Canada, myself and Biodun Arojah. We came together and we formed a children's theater called Peanut Circle. And immediately puppetry was one of the tools that we employed to entertain the children. Proud to that, like I said, there was a TV program in NT. I used to work with the Nigerian Television Authority. I can't remember the name of the program now, but it's a puppetry program. All right, I was part of that with Roland Henshaw, Aaron Garvey, Godfrey Odafe, and the rest of them. So that's poured on my, interest in puppetry. So when we came together to form this, theater for young people, like I said, in 1989, Peanut Circle, my interest in that grew. And then we as a group, we started building puppets, hand puppets, with cloth and all that. Then I developed further, into other bigger puppets. Then I went into schools, and it was always magical whenever we're in schools. The teachers just surrendered the pupils to us and say, take over. And it's all, like I said, magical. The children learn more. We go to school with songs, with very short plays, but full of songs and the movement and all that. So, so I didn't let go of puppetry. Hello, can people still see me?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then there was another, because Goethe Institute, the German Cultural Center in Nigeria, they were very instrumental to development of arts, fortunately in Nigeria. So they brought a puppeteer from Germany, very interesting puppeteer. I've forgotten her name now. So I'm talking about in the early 1990s. So pardon me if I forget names. And the title of our skits was Little Color Yellow or something. And from a dot, it transformed into a puppet. Wonderful, beautiful performance. So again, that ingrained my interest in puppetry. And so 1998, when I had a festival, I called Children's Theatre and Art Festival, Shita Fest, I invited a puppets theatre group from Germany called Crocodile Theatre. You can check them out. They do a fantastic job. Crocodile Theatre in Osnabrück, in Germany, and we've remained friends ever since. They came with just two of them, but they were able to engage over 300-400 members of the audience, in puppetry. So, but I have since, and then again, sorry, this is very crucial. I just have to mention in this conversation, I must acknowledge the fact that we have our own Kwahi puppetry, and I began to make research. somebody like Dotun, who is also a discussant, you know, is a very resource person when it comes to, you know, puppetry in Nigeria.
Is that a traditional form of Nigerian puppetry?
Yes, the Kwahil puppets, you know, it's somehow fixed, right? And then my research also enabled me to understand that we have other form of puppetries, you know, the big ones, the one that looks like masquerade and all that, they are all form of puppetry. But one thing I find very challenging as a puppeteer is that it's very difficult for people to get into puppetry. You know, even after I moved over here, somehow the tradition of puppetry in Lagos went down. I would not say died completely. It went down because I was always engaging either students or pupils in their schools, or actually have a performance where I'll invite schools to come. But since I left, and I may be wrong, people are there on the forum to, you know, correct me, because I always go back and forth, like I said. There hasn't been much activity in puppetry. Finally, before I submit, there was a program by Nigerian Conservation Foundation, NCF, 1993. They brought in some guys from the UK here. I've forgotten his name as well. This was, again, 1992, 93. And then we had a program called All Hands for the Environment, you know, and then we also employed puppetry. I was at the time working with the National Troupe of Nigeria. They had a children's session where I teach puppetry. So I prepared the members of National Troupe to join the program, and then we used puppetry, and it was really, really fantastic. You know, I would love to bring back, you know, well, not bring back, I would love to come back and then, you know, show up the interest once again. Like I said, I have a theater now in Nigeria, which I hope to do that. So this is interesting. I want to see what's going to happen with this conversation and then carry it forward. I hope I've been able to just ramble on and perhaps be able to get one or two things from what I've said.
No, I'm absolutely.
I'm just particularly interested in anything puppetry. That's it. That's why I'm part of this conversation.
Thank you so much, Lookman. Well, no, that's not rambling at all. That's absolutely wonderful. And Jerry's put in in the chat, Jerry's put in a link to a YouTube video of Kwagir puppetry performance. So I might want to save that from the chat box. And I think Dotun has just joined us, or I saw his name coming up on the waiting room there.
Yes.
So Dotun would be able to have that conversation with Lookman about the state of Nigerian puppetry today. Hello, Olu Dotun, which do you prefer?
Yeah, whichever. I think it's fine. Dotun is fine.
Dotun is fine?
Yes,
hi, Dotun. I'm Matt Jennings. I suppose I should say Dr. Matt Jennings, but my father was a medical doctor, so I still feel a fraud.
My pleasure.
But here, Dr. Dotun, you want to tell us a bit about yourself before? We were going to start with Karen Torley doing her presentation, and then Matt Smith, and then yourself, if that's okay. If you don't mind last. Well, no. Sorry. Equally best. First, second, and third. But Dotun, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Of course, the most obvious is that I'm a Nigerian. The full name is Dotun Osunsanya. I studied theater arts initially, generally, and then later I studied puppetry, particularly in Bulgaria. That is the High Institute of Puppetry Art in Sofia. When I came back to the country, I got up in hospital administration.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
The sound is breaking up a little bit.
Yes.
The sound is breaking.
Okay.
So I think I heard you say something about studying puppetry in Bulgaria, was it?
Bulgaria, yes.
Sofia.
I'm sorry, Dotun. We really can't make out the sound on your connection at the minute.
Okay.
Would there be possible maybe to have see if you can get a better sound quality? Well, and also, sorry, what you say? Or and maybe you could move so you haven't got the light behind your head, because at the minute you're a shadow. But here, what we might do is we might get on with Karen Torley stuff, and then hopefully in the meantime, connection will improve. All right. So, but thanks for coming, and maybe you can type something into the chat box to tell us a little bit of a brief CV bio of yourself, Bulgaria, and so on. But here, what we'll do now is, I think, you know, we have waited long enough for people to make up for the time difference. Personally, I wouldn't mind carrying on later with the whole session. Like, you know, I've got nothing else to do. It's a Saturday. So Matt Smith and Dotun feel about it. But if you like, perhaps we could carry on a bit past 1. Is that okay? Or does Matt, do you need to rush off? Or Karen, do you want to rush off?
Yeah, that's okay.
I'm okay.
That's okay? Cool. All right, cool. Well, yeah, it's relaxed, you know? Irish time, Nigerian time.
Yeah.
Somebody set up the road to me. We don't use clocks, we use calendars. There are parts of Australia that are like that too. So anyway, with no further ado, I would like to introduce the wonderful, the amazing puppet master puppeteer of Derry, definitely Derry's leading puppeteer, Karen Torley of Banyan Theatre Company, and I'll shut myself up and take it away, Karen.
What a build-up, Matt. Thank you. I'm just going to, there, okay. Hi, so thanks so much for having me. My name is Karen. I'm from Banyan Theatre Company. I've been a puppeteer for over 30 years. I don't know, 33 years, something like that. My background is, initially I come from a family of puppeteers. So my aunt and uncle have a purpose-built puppet theatre in Scotland in a place called Biggar. And it's been based on the old Victorian Penny Plain theatres, little miniature ones. So they have built like a big version of it. They're called Purpose Puppets. So I started with them initially and worked with them for a couple of years. Now they work in ultraviolet light, so they're working in black light, and their puppets are large, 3/4 human size characters, and they tour internationally, and they've been going since the early 70s, a really long time. So I started with them. I was always fascinated as a child by watching what they were doing. So any opportunity I used to get to go and stay with them, I would be in their theatre and playing with the puppets. I absolutely just loved it, always loved it. So from there, I moved to Norwich, and I worked with Norwich Puppet Theatre, another purpose-built theatre. Well, it was actually an old church, but it's now a puppet theatre, by Ray De Silva, the De Silvas, which are very well-known puppeteers in the UK. So Ray and Joan De Silva set up this puppet theatre, and I worked with them for 8 years, really learning my craft, I suppose. Within that, I worked with companies in London, and trained a bit and directed a bit and learned puppet making and all sorts of other skills. But then about 20 odd years ago, I set up Banyan Theatre Company with my colleague, Joy Haynes. And with that, we wanted to explore mainly object theatre, which is probably one of my main interests, really. I really love objects. I love how you can transform something so simple into a very believable character. I work mainly with children, not exclusively, but mainly with children. I work all the way from early years, from 3 years, right up to the teenage years. But I also jump in and work with older people. I've used puppetry with daycare centres, with groups over 60s and with older people with dementia. Using objects has been so interesting, taking objects into people that have dementia, and really interesting to see what the response has been to different objects, like tactile, things that are tactile have brought back lots of memories. It's been really interesting work. But my main work is touring, and I tour shows into schools, theatres, festivals. I tour here in the UK and wider afield. So what I'm going to do is just show you some of my puppets that I've got. I've got a collection of things here, and maybe talk a little bit about the development of them and how I use them, if that's okay. Are we okay? Are we good? Okay. So when we started Banyan, we were really interested in exploring objects. And the very first show I did is a story I know you're all familiar with, would be The Emperor's New Clothes, a real classic story. And Hans Christian Andersen. And one of the key elements I wanted to introduce into that show was working with clothing and fabric, and taking that as a key point in the design, and expanding it from there. So within that, we had a procession of animals. I'm just going to show you my favorite puppet of all my puppets, which is So Nothingy. And this actually took a really long time to develop. Opposed to making a really beautiful puppet, which I love beautiful puppets, they're great, but there's something a little bit extra magical about when something comes from nothing. And that's exactly what I have here. So I wanted to make an elephant, and I tried making elephants. In fact, there must have been about 5 different puppets that were actually made, physically made. And then playing around with fabric, found a grey shirt and created a very simple elephant puppet. This is probably my favorite puppet out of all my puppets, because it's just so nothingy. And within this, we also had a little mini one that ran after him. So it was a little child's shirt that came running after it. So you can't get simpler than that. And then it goes back to being a shirt again. That to me is what is magic about puppetry. That's what I love most. I love something coming from nothing. So I've got other object things here. So I'm going to go moving up a little bit, I suppose. I have a bit of a fascination with teapots and buckets and things like that. So we have a little granny here, which so granny is an old battered teapot and some glasses and obviously little teaspoons. She actually started off life as this one. Now, I am actually a big fan of this granny. She goes everywhere with me. She's Matt has a little puppet he travels with too. This is my granny who comes everywhere with me. She actually came to Cape Town with us. She sat in my suitcase. And she went into the townships and did a bit of dancing with the local children there, which was amazing. But she actually started life as this one, but I wanted her to be more objecty in the end. So she hasn't got a job anymore. She just travels with me. And then I changed it into this one, because to me, I love the way that when I watch children play, I love the way that they can just take anything and change it and create a whole world. And it's so engaging to watch. So I try and, I suppose, find the essence of that I can use in my own work. And really, that's what I like to develop. So that's a granny, which I'm going to put in there. Carrying on with my fascination with teapots and buckets, is a troll, which is made from obviously a watering can. And he has the bottom jaw here. So he's worked from a piece of fabric and my hand. So he's just really, once again, really simple. Now, part of the thing with this was, so this is a troll in the story of the Billy Goats. And this show was made from really young children, so 3 to sort of 5, 6-year-olds. And obviously there's so much fear attached to things like, you know, the trolls, the monsters, the witches and all those things. So the development of this was really about showing children how, you know, things can be made from nothing but can go back to being nothing. So taking the element of fear out of that, which actually takes me on to another character here, a wolf. So the wolf in the story of Little Red Riding Hood, we created from a Gladstone bag. So an old doctor's bag. Now we put straps on these. So the straps, right at the beginning of the show, the straps drop down. So we have this, and then the bag opens up, and then from the back comes the tail, which is an old antique foxtail actually. And then from inside the bag comes the head, and the head attaches onto the bag. You can get it on. Bag closes up, and we have an instant wolf. Oh! There we go. And the head, if you can see, is actually made from an old bicycle seat and leather ears. And here we have some butcher's tongs. So it's really about taking away the element of the fear of it. Although saying that, I have to say, even with using this as a wolf and the children see it being made, it still gets some of them where they're really fearful. They start backing off. It's a great way if a child is really not sort of like engaging very well. The wolf is very good at engaging them and he goes close to them. So that's always worked really well. So that's the wolf. He's in the story of Little Red Riding Hood. So I do actually really like mixing objects in a production. I love to have some traditionally made puppets as well as objects. So like mixing the two things together. So like here I have, this is Little Red Riding Hood. So you can see her body's made from a basket, but she is carved. She's carved from lime wood. And she's sort of made on a little rod with, now because her legs are hanging like this inside the basket, she can do lots of running, as she does, running from the wolf all the time. And she's just a tabletop rod puppet made from a plant pot basket. So that's Little Red Riding Hood. Ooh, where to go next? I've got so much stuff here lying around. Oh, a chicken. So a chicken using an egg basket. So that is an egg basket. Instead of, you know, I'm always inspired by going into sort of junk shops and secondhand shops. And it's a great way, it's a great resource too, without buying lots of expensive materials. If you don't have lots of money to make things with, then, you know, obviously use what's around you. And there's nothing better than finding things lying about in your kitchen or, you know, so we've got an egg basket, and you can see the feet on here. I've got our bent forks, a rubber glove, and this is a lemon squeezer. So really simple. And the character in the show in this one can jump inside the chicken, so he can run about inside the chicken's body. So there's a chicken, once again, another transformation of an object. In the kitchen, a whole load of things to find. The old classic, the oven glove, and we have a little pig from an oven glove, and the tea towel, really simple. Or in that story as well, there is a fox. Now, a little bit different with this one, because I found this, this is actually not a real fox fur, it's like a fake one I found in a charity shop. And I've put some curtain ties on him. And here we go, he's got like a set of tongs on the top. And that's the wolf. I do find that children definitely respond better to the things that have been created in the it's just because of how they play and they respond to it in a different way. But there's definitely I suppose it expands their imagination and it makes them realize what they can then do with the things that they've got around them. Although the idea originally came from them, I'm sort of feeding the idea back to them again. So it's a ping pong, it's going the other way. And then even using things like, I've got an umbrella here, which is in a show. I needed a character to pick up a puppet and fly off with it. It was a crow to fly off with it. So I was playing around with how I could do that without using my hand. So at the top of this here, I've actually got this a really old-fashioned thing. I don't even know if they make these or you can get these anymore. It's a glove stretcher. It's attached on an umbrella. So if I can turn the umbrella out, and he's a bit more like a pterodactyl, I suppose, but in my head, he's a crow, a dinosaur crow. So he can fly off, and within that, he can pick the character up, and that closes, and they can fly off into the distance. So that's an umbrella one. When I create a show, I suppose most of my time is the play aspect of it. So I don't go into a rehearsal. I don't make puppets and then go into rehearsal. It all comes about at the same time. I like to, and I'm not precious about things. Like I will throw things out as quick as I'll make them. So I can make something, throw it out, trash it, and then start again with something. So I'll keep going. So buckets again. I'm so into buckets. This is a cow that that I made to get. I wanted it to be able to eat grass and move around, but I wanted to use a little bucket. And the reason being that actually this one here, I believe this is an African musical instrument. So I don't know, there's probably a name for it. You might know, I don't know what it's called. So it's like a bell type thing. So I used that for the body because it naturally had the legs coming down and the head with a string on it. Now I wanted to change the scale. That's the reason I used the bucket, because the puppet had to change, which is what puppetry is great at, obviously, is changing scales to things. So the puppet then turns into the big one. So I thought the bucket was an ideal way for me to play around with the scales. And also he's got one huge nostril because the puppet that the crow picked up also gets eaten by a cow and gets dropped. So that's why he's got the one large nostril there. And he's got bolts for eyes, and inside there you can see there's just a handle inside. Yeah. And I've seen children after this. I've actually seen them with picking up buckets and turning them into the cows and stuff. So it's really magical to watch them play. After I've done a show, I love to hang about a little bit in the nursery or school when they're given a little bit of time to just, you know, chill out and play afterwards. It's great to see how they respond to it and how they start building and making up their own stories based around what they've seen. It's really inspiring to do that. When I create a show, a new fairy tale especially, I go into a school and I tell them the story, and I take lots of bits and pieces with me and paper and objects and creative materials, and I sit in a circle with the children, and then I tell them the story, and I get them to start playing with the objects or describing to me what things would look like in their imagination or what you could use to make it, because it's free labor, basically. They're my creative designers. I can get them to do the work. A king and a queen in a show I've done recently. Most of my shows I perform alone, which has its own challenges, because obviously I've only got two hands. So I'm always looking for ways to work 2 or 3 puppets at once. So there's a show I did recently. These are curtain tiebacks, obviously. It's a conversation between a queen and a king, and a sort of deputy king. So the two of them have a really nice little relationship together, and they're just 2 curtain tiebacks, which come from a pair of curtains which are hanging on the set, because not only do I like to use the objects in play with the puppets, I really like to use the sets from objects as well. So I like to, as much as possible, anything that I have on stage, I like to find a use for it. So, you know, it's great to have, like behind me here, I have this, which is a new show that I'm building. And this is going to be, this is a suitcase to begin with, and then it also becomes a shadow screen. So it's on top of a chair here. So it changes into something. I really love being able to transform things. So these are hanging to begin with from curtains, and then they come to life and get operated in that way. So, ooh, there we go. Rope obviously is great for everything. You know, I like picking up bits of driftwood as well. So with the snake here, the head is just a piece of driftwood, which I saw while walking. I put a couple of nails into it. So, you know, he's, driftwood is a great one for finding driftwood lying around. This one here is a character that I made from a piece of driftwood I found lying like this, and turned it up, and immediately I saw a face in it. So the only thing I've done to it is literally put a couple of eyes in there, and a sack on him. So absolute simplicity, like really quick puppet to make. In fact, this one didn't even require thinking about it because I just saw him lying around. So he's there. When I was talking about the sets for things, like finding ways, I've always found it challenging to make elements in shows like water and fire. And lots of the fairy tales have things like that in them. So I'm always looking for really simple ways to develop those. And without using too much technology, like go as simple as possible. So things like a river was one that I came up with, just was some fabric falling from a bucket. So I just throw the bucket out and the silk forms the water. So like super simple. I'm going to put the river back in again, and you don't get wet, which is always a bonus. And then things like, you know, I have here like a sweeping brush. I needed a horse in something, but once again, I wanted to use domestic objects. So turning the brush upside down and using the brush to be the horse's mane. And the head just added onto it. So I suppose it's like looking for ways to mix the objects. I mean, objects are so, actually, I don't know if Phil is back on here again, but Phil and I just worked on a project with fairly recently last year. I think it was last year. Yeah, it was last year, at the beginning of last year, before we all got locked down, with first responders. And what we were trying to develop was the idea of how objects are so significant in our everyday lives. So we're all very attached to objects. I think that's what makes them so fascinating. Like, I mean, I'm sure you've got things yourself, I know I have, that have traveled through my childhood into my adult years that are really precious, and it's an object that obviously there's nothing but a memory attached to it. But we were finding a way to get first responders to tell their stories, and we were exploring the whole idea that our memories are locked away until we release them. So we literally took that into the realm where we had objects inside boxes that stimulated memories for them. So whereas especially traumatic, because it was all about trauma, and having an object, you know, it might be like, I don't know, like a red phone, or you know, like just something that is, I mean, I'm just trying to think of the objects we had in there, but we did lots of exploring using things like buttons and like medical instruments that maybe that they had used, and finding a way where they could, the object could hold the space. So the object would be taken out of a box, but not just taken out willy-nilly and thrown around, but the object actually became precious in their hands. And how to change the focus from the person storytelling and sharing their story to how the focus from the audience point of view could be on the object. And a lot of that obviously was how you handled it, how you took it out of where your focus was, if you were focused on the object, and how you held it, and how you remembered the story that came from the object, which obviously pulls the viewer into viewing it as well. So it was a really simple puppetry technique, I suppose, of focus, but using it on a really simple object.
I would just like to say on that project, it was heartbreaking, but it was extraordinary as well, because we were working with trauma survivors, and these objects, that they weren't written for them. These were objects from their own nightmares, their own, you know, almost hidden, almost partially buried, and we were excavating them. But from my perspective, because I was coming at it from the set design point of view, so it was bringing their dreams into the set as well, you know, and they were literally picking up their own dreams and sharing
just
them.
To sort of give it, sorry to interrupt there, Phil. So just to give a bit of context to other people, because I'm very familiar with the project, it involved half a dozen of our drama students. So for people who don't know, the First Responders Project was for people who had been first responders to the sites of violence during the Troubles. So if you don't know, and many people don't, that for 30 years, there was kind of a civil conflict going on in Northern Ireland, lots of bombings and lots of shootings going on over a 30-year period. So first responders were ambulance drivers, fire brigade officers, police officers, journalists in some occasions, nurses and so on, who had to arrive at the scene before anyone else of a bombing or a shooting and so on. So it was about people who had survived those kinds of experiences during the Troubles, which officially ended in 1998, and how they're sort of reliving trauma through, and many of them have post-traumatic stress disorder for 30 years of constantly dealing with the aftermath of bombings and shooting and so on. So in this project, Phil's amazing set design and Karen's brilliant sort of introduction of very simple puppetry skills for these community participants, most of whom had never performed before, to bring out an object that evoked a memory of something that they had through during the Troubles. Was there, am I right in thinking there was you remember there was a line of dialogue about the striped stockings, about how home a bomb, the woman could not get the image of the striped stockings out. No, it was painted toenails.
It was painted toenails, but there was a striped sock as well, a striped sock. That was when they found a body part after a bomb, and this was really like all-consuming in her mind, you know. Yeah,
her trauma was repeated dreams for decades afterwards about a foot with painted toenails on it and a striped stocking. Was there a striped stocking in a box, or was it just it was evoked?
No, we didn't. To be honest, when we were first exploring that idea, we did use things like that, but it was too strong an image. It was like I think
it was too gruesome.
Yeah. I mean, it was
it was really
concept,
the trauma of it. But I mean, even the concept of it, I think when she spoke about it, everybody was able to then visualize what it was, because they were basically trying to locate the other body part, you know, like it was, you know, and they were on the phone sort of speaking about what it was. And it was such a traumatic thing for her. And she was heavily pregnant at the time too. So it made it even more, you know, like traumatic for her. But it was just so interesting how that concept developed from, I mean, I went in right at the beginning with the first responders. I didn't know what I was going into myself, and their stories were, they were so traumatic, you know. And within that, I just took lots and lots of objects with me and got them to create, have I gone?
No, something happened there, I'm not sure.
No.
Am I still there?
Yeah.
Yep.
I think within that, I got them to create images using just the objects. So not even manipulating them, not doing anything else, just create a scene that might be, you know, from a memory. And it was so emotional. It was really how people really broke down actually by holding an object, and they totally broke down. And then there was added memories and added bits of the story that started to build and come out of that. So I think that's the path we went down in, and especially like using the boxes was, you know, we had everything stored in the box and we sort of took it out, and it just became so significant the way these memories were hidden and then were brought into the open, but also could be stored back inside again. It could be shut away. So it was whether you allow that memory out or not, but that was using obviously the object again. So
yeah, in terms of that technique of focus as well, one thing I should tell everybody, Karen and I have been working together for the last 4 or 5 years on using puppetry skills to animate medical mannequins. One of the things I mainly do is health action training, which is using drama techniques, applied drama techniques to improve communication skills, self-care and resilience for nurses and doctors, not necessarily survivors of trauma, although this year, all nurses that I've ever known have been traumatized by the coronavirus experience. But how Karen just teaches for within maybe 15 minutes, simple technique of breath, belief, focus, and touch, which get nurses to bring to life the medical mannequins that they have to use in their medical simulation, so that they then interact with the medical mannequin as though it's a human being, which they have to do anyway, but it's a lot easier when it's animated. So we'll open the floor to questions from anybody else here who would like to respond or ask a question of Karen Torley. Anybody at all? You can use the emoji hand signal, or you can just put your finger up. Lookman's got a finger up. So Lookman, do you want to ask a question of Karen?
Yeah, Karen, very nice presentation, and I can see that I can connect with most of your experience and everything you've said, how you just take an object, inanimate object, and then let it come to life, and then it's more believable, you know, with the children or young people than when you have a well-made puppet, you know, trim, nice, and all that, you know, because like you said, it comes from them, and we're only giving it back to them, so it makes it very believable. It means they can also improvise with their fingers, and then it becomes a puppet and it's talking and all that. So I've enjoyed all of that. You said you perform, you're a solo performer. How is that experience when you have to deal with set changing, you have to deal with character changing and all of that, and the energy? Or, yeah, so. Yeah,
well, I mean, I suppose I've been working solo for maybe about 20 years now, doing solo shows, but it is a challenge. I mean, a show like performing all the characters within, most of my shows are about 50 minutes in length, but the puppets really do become complete characters. I never feel, it sounds a bit weird, but I never feel totally alone within that, because the puppets really, the energy is so ingrained in them, I suppose, when I've done the shows. I have 10 shows which I'm constantly rotating and touring. And things like the sets, when I'm showing you the objects and the puppets, the sets I do pretty much in the same way. Like one of the shows, the set is a cart, which I've made out of old bits of wood and wheels, and it all happens on there. The one that I was showing you with the elephant, the one with the creatures and animals in there, was literally done. It's done with washing lines and an ironing board, and you know, so I try and incorporate the design all the way through. So the design comes, in fact, quite often with me, the set comes before the puppets, because it sort of leads the design of how the whole place is going to work, how it's going to come together.
Yeah, sorry, this is a quick one, which leads me to the next question. I don't know the size of your audience or the stage where you perform as well would determine, because if you're a solo puppeteer, then the size of the audience and the length of your performance would also determine how well you can go, if you know what I mean, because it can be tiring if you're performing to, let's say, 300, 500, you know, audience, and So I want to know,
my maximum audience size is usually like 200 is the absolute maximum, but usually about 150 would be. Right. But I mean, I like working with. It's been so interesting because of. So during this whole lockdown, you know, like basically, I mean, for all of us that are working in the arts, especially, I mean, work just disappeared. But so within this, when things have opened up again, I've had times where I've gone back and done a few shows, and I found it absolutely exhausting in a way that I never ever have done before, because my stamina for it, like, I mean, I could have gone like, you know, like shows every day for 2 or 3 weeks without a day off, and I have the energy to do that. Whereas I've found now that I've gone in and done maybe a couple of shows and my stamina has just disappeared, you know.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, I mean, it is obviously, being a puppeteer is obviously physically, it is fairly demanding, and the awkward positions you have to get in, but, and using your voice in awkward positions and all of those, you know, the things that you just take for granted, you take a year out of that and it's like, whoa, you know, it's difficult to get back to that place. So I think it is going to take a time. It's made me question performing anymore, you know, it's made me question lots of things, I think, you know. Yeah.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Karen. And I love that idea that, you know, you get all your best design ideas from children. I'm sure it's not just because they're free or cheap. But the idea that children learn and create their world through play, and then they remind us that the rest of us are always creating our worlds out of our imagination. And we're, you know, we're kids, we play doctors and nurses. When we get paid to pretend to be doctors.
I think that's it. Oh, we all have to hold on to that part of us, that child in us that we can create. Otherwise, our creativity just goes. We have to, that freedom that you get as a child, you know, hold on to it.
And when you were talking, you made me think the connection between the word imagination and the word magic. That it's bringing the magic back to the world we're living in. But Karen, I know we sort of like carrying on and allowing sort of maybe a bit of run on time, but perhaps we should hear from another puppeteer. I've got to say, Karen, that's I love every single time I've seen those puppets.
Sure.
The wolf comes out of the bag, and you know, the bicycle seat, the scariest bicycle seat I've ever seen. So you want to say something, Jerry?
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, of interest for me is the fact she referred to. I mean, it looks very simple. I mean, from where she started from, it looks like puppetry is something you can just, you know, pop up and do at will. However, I mean, the fact that there is the possibility to create something out of nothing, you know, the way she had described it is the interesting part of it for me. And that is one of the objectives of this exchange, is to stimulate interest. It means that for those who are looking to engage in the art of puppetry, I mean, you don't need to wait until you get to that point of sophistication. You can actually start, you know, from nothing. So that's the interesting part for me. And I think that one day you might just wake up and see that I am a puppeteer myself.
Well, I mean, one of the wonderful things for us about working with Karen, especially when we've been working with the nurses as well as drama students, is to start at just any simple object like a pen. I mean, Karen's obviously fun.
Yeah.
You know, but you just start like any kind of level of animation. I mean, Karen,
actually, when we went to Cape Town,
we can all do it. Sorry.
When we went to Cape Town, and so I was doing a piece on objects there. So I had a friend who was living in Cape Town who I asked her could she shop for me and get some vegetables, and that's what we did. The workshop that I did in that group was with local vegetables, which were collected in a carrier bag, and I think, you know, that's it. I think sometimes people think, oh no, I need to learn all these making skills, or I need to buy a very expensive puppet. Well, you know, you just don't. You know, all you need is your imagination. You can go anywhere with it, you know.
Yeah. Philemon has a question there. I think Philemon, see Philemon's hand up. Philemon, you wanna say something or ask Karen something? Philemon?
Yeah.
You're on mute. You're on mute.
You're muted.
You're muted currently.
I have unmuted.
Now you're all right. Yep. Now we can hear you.
I basically wanted to ask Karen how she goes about her content development. As a person who comes from social puppet theater for social change, we are so much into the material, the content, the issues that you send out, and particularly the process that you go through in terms of issue diagnosis, content development, performance and rehearsal, and after the performance, the follow-up process, the monitoring process, the impact that you maybe were expecting. How do you go about this, considering that you are basically a solo puppeteer, and you develop and you create content by yourself, you rehearse by yourself? Do you have people to critique your work before you even send it out, or you go out for a performance? I would like
to... Oh, lost you a bit there.
Know how...
Sorry, Philemon. Sorry, Philemon, the connection seems to have gone bad.
And we get him to type in.
Very, very impactful.
Yeah. Something about impactful. But I mean, there were some questions there in the first place. Content creation and evaluation of impact and identifying what kind of social changes you want to bring about and how do you develop.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not working directly. I'm not working on a lot of issue-based theatre. That's not really what I do. And it's not that I haven't done some of that work. I have, you know, but it's not really the direct, I suppose, from my point of view, like when I'm working with things, I think there's underlying messages and issues in it. You know, as there are in fairy tales, there's so much depth to a fairy tale, but I am not, you know, I'm not directly engaging on that level. But if I was, then I think I'd work in similar ways. I mean, I'm using, I'm like material-wise for things like that. I mean, things like, you know, just working with paper. I'm creating either characters or, you know, anything, the development of, you know, the strength of ripping a piece of paper and what it means to somebody to watch it on stage opposed to somebody just doing it in their house. You know, there's power in the simplest of things. So if I was, I suppose, developing that type of work, I would look into, you know.
Yeah, so your focus would be on the aesthetics of the social art. So, and in programs like, for instance, the first response project you were talking about before,
yeah,
in relation to the question, would be that there is a funding body and there is an arts organization. So, for instance, that was through the Playhouse and the Playhouse Peace Building Academy, and they've applied to European peace funds for it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
The project evaluation on it. And your contribution to that would be about the aesthetic experience of working with the materials and working with the community members. So
yeah,
fortunately, you don't have to fill out too many evaluation forms because...
No, I mean, I've had funding from, you know, the Arts Council here, but I never rely on anything I do. I do what I do basically from what I've got and what I can manage to do in order to survive. And it's all part of the process for me. I'm not someone that chases funding. I don't really go down that avenue, although I have been funded for things. I self-fund pretty much everything I do. I do the work, it funds me to do more work, and it's domino effect. And that's basically how I work financially.
We have another question or a hand up from Okenwa. Okenwa? I think Okenwa was first and then Dotun. Do you want to turn your microphone on, Okenwa? I can't hear you. Or Dotun, one. Oh, there we go. Okay, now we can hear you now. Sort of.
Some sound issues.
Maybe Okenwa, if you could type your question into the chat box, because we're... Sorry, Okenwa, we can't hear what you're saying. Type it into the chat box. And speaking of which, in the chat box, Matt Smith says you can be playful with issues and then find solutions on how you communicate an idea. I think Matt's keen to sort of get presenting himself as well. And Dotun, you have a hand up as well. Do you want to unmute yourself and maybe we can see if we can hear from you now, Dotun?
Yes. I hope I'm clear this time around. The first thing is to actually make a call to underscore what she said about making things from nothing. And then in terms of methodology, she went on to talk about the basic tool you need is the imagination and all. But that was something she said in passing, especially as I know that there are people here who are hoping to go on to practice puppetry. That is very important, especially when as a puppeteer, you are playing in the view of the audience. Your capacity to shift focus from yourself onto the object is usually very crucial compared to performance. And I just wanted to understand that. But what is the question for me is, she says she does not spend much time in rehearsal. Exactly how much time does she spend and why?
Okay, so Karen, sorry, Dotun, there was a few sound issues there, but one was about how the skill of diverting the attention from yourself as a puppeteer to the object of puppeteering. And the other one was, what's your rehearsal time and rehearsal process?
Well, I mean, they overlap so much that it's hard. It usually takes me about 3 months to put a show together, I would say, from start to finish. But about 3 months, but I usually dip in and out of it. So I have like a bit of dividing time at the beginning and then jump on, and then, I dip in and out of rehearsal, I suppose. And then the show develops with an audience. I mean, like anything, it develops as you go along. You can pick up and throw out bits. As far as working with the objects, really, focus is everything, really. Working on my own creates its own focus from an audience. I think when you've got one person on stage opposed to 5 or 6, it's sort of easier to pin in on a focus with things. But I mean, even, like using a piece of fabric from there, and, if my focus is on it, then your focus is on it. Whereas if I'm focusing out to you and I'm moving this around, then you're going to be looking at me because I'm animated. So I suppose it's just all about, really having the energy and the breath and the emotion and linking it to the object, really. I don't know if that answers your question. I'm not really sure.
Yeah. When Karen has worked with our nurses, we have this sort of BBFT, breath, belief, focus, and touch, and how, first of all, the focus of the person on the object, and then the breathing of, synchronizing your breathing of the puppeteer with the object, and then believing that it's real, and then touch. I can't remember what the touch part is, Karen,
Well, I mean, it's just I think it's your emotional connection to the object, how you handle it, how you touch it, opposed to me just picking something up and throwing it down. I really, the minute I engage, the minute I touch the object, I'm engaging with it. So I have to, I put the energy in it in the first touch. It's not a case of me picking it up, wiggling it around, and then going, oh, now I'm going to puppeteer. It's really engaging straight away with it. And obviously weight is obviously really important. When Matt and I have been working with the medical mannequins, weight became an issue because they were so heavy to move. Whereas normally when you're working with a puppet, you're trying to find the weight in it. We were trying to deal with the weight in the mannequins. So weight, creating and, giving something weight, giving it feet, giving it legs, that's all part of the focus and the connection with it.
Yeah, I've seen we've got 2 more hands up. We also want to get Matt Smith on in a second. But Ngozi and maybe Kenwa, do you want to sort of make a brief comment, or if the sound doesn't work great, tap it in the box? But Ngozi first, perhaps.
Okay. A great job, puppets and everything. You've been doing an amazing job. But I actually have 2 questions, if time would permit. The first question is just basically, how do you get your inspiration? Because it's phenomenal, I must say. And then secondly, like the response from the first responders, most of them who had PTSD, who have had childhood traumas. Speaking from a place like Africa now, Nigeria in particular, where a lot of people, where PTSD is hardly recognized as an issue. When you raised the puppets that look, the horse-looking puppet, it sent something. I felt something. There was an instant connection because I've also suffered from post-traumatic childhood traumas, and that's mob stick you raised. So that mob stick in particular, it's been used as a weapon against me on several occasions. So what happened to experience an opportunity where something that was before now used as a weapon is, on the other hand, used, to create relief, to create a sense of relief. It's really, really amazing. So which brings me to my second question. Do you have plans for the African market, for the African audience, particularly Nigeria, other than this?
I'm sorry, I've lost the sound. I can't really hear you there.
Okay, do you have plans? First and foremost, what inspires your work? Because it's amazing. And secondly, do you have plans for the Nigerian audience, Nigerian market? Is there plans to reach out with this message to the Nigerian audience in future?
Well, I mean, on the second part of that, I would absolutely love to. I don't know the vehicle of how to get there, but I would certainly love to.
I will bring you down. Don't worry. Lookman.
Okay, I'm there. I'm there. And you know, that's amazing that, you know, you're saying about the object and how it brought something to you. I think that's the significance of objects in our lives is just, I suppose, what is so emotive about puppetry. You know, it's a thing that really gets us. So yeah, I mean, the idea that you know, you've had something, an object trigger something traumatic in you, that you can take that object and turn it into something that is almost healing, I think is a really amazing thing to do. So maybe that's something worth, you know, for us all to explore a little bit more.
So
and I'm inspired by anything and everything. There's no set thing. Matt inspires me. I'm inspired by anything around me that I see, that I pick up, that I watch. A leaf falling from a tree and the way it moves, you know, is so engaging. A paper bag blowing in the wind and how it's a dance, you know, anything like that. It is an inspiration, really.
Thank you, Karen. Kenwa, do we want to try hearing from you again? Microphone, see if we can hear you. You want to turn on your microphone, Kenwa? You've got your hand anyway.
Unmute.
Unmute, Kenwa. Well, maybe type it into the box, because we should possibly
type it in the box. Yeah.
Thanks a million, Karen Torley. Big round of applause.
Thank you.
Fabulous contribution.
Thank you.
And shall we have Matt Smith next? Good to go. Or Matt Smith's putting a hand up. What's that mean? Oh, he's putting a clapping hands emoji. Oh, my dad. My teenage son was telling me yesterday, only people over 30 use emojis anymore. So it's cool. It's old farts. But anyway, Matt Smith is the senior lecturer.
Yeah.
Senior lecturer in applied drama. Is that right? Well, here, Matt Smith works at Portsmouth University. He's been a puppeteer. He plays around with puppets. He's worked with people who are in criminal justice system. He's worked with refugees and migrants who are in detention centers. He's worked with all sorts of people. Here, Matt, you tell us, who are you and what are you all about?
Well, I want to do a little bit of a show and tell, and hopefully, I'm just going to check you can hear me all right. I'm not breaking up too much. You're getting enough. The sound is fine.
Yep, sounds fine.
So first thing, just to sort of change the mood a little bit, can everyone just show me their hands? Because this is the key thing for puppeteers and for everybody who's doing puppetry. Let's see everyone's hands. Because one of the things that I love when I'm doing Zoom is about when you're doing stuff like this on Zoom, Zoom starts to get a little bit more interesting. It's a little bit strange. And I keep doing this with all sorts of audiences and seeing all these wonderful images of hands. So I might ask you to do things when we're doing this my little session. Please ask questions, and hopefully we'll keep going and there won't be any, you know, I won't break up, you can hear me and all that sort of things. If I'm looking at this screen and not there, camera is a movable camera, and as you can see, this is the pile of stuff that I've been accumulating this morning, and this stuff is one of the problems of the puppeteer's life. And Karen will understand this, is just stuff everywhere. We just have stuff and stuff and stuff, and we're interested in stuff. And I think stuff is really, really exciting. And during lockdown, lots of stuff has changed for me. So toilet rolls have started to become, like we were just talking about emojis, kind of like a space for different sorts of emotions. I'm rather blank there. But I made loads of these for some reason lockdown, and there was just like tons of these weird emojis about how I was feeling in lockdown. And there's like a ton, and I made a ton of these. I don't know why. They kind of like, they were quite good fun. But I mean, I clearly with Karen in terms of her way of thinking. That's one of the reasons why these sorts of puppets are the kind of most interesting puppets as a lip sync puppet. Very simple thing, just two balls on a piece of card, and really simple puppet. And it's a lip sync puppet, so it can speak quite well. It can talk to audiences if it wants to, or ignore audiences if it wants to. And this is the kind of puppetry that I like. It's very immediate, it's very quick, and you know, you can get groups to think about it really, really well. And also what I like as well is it masks me and I become a puppet, which is quite nice. The other thing that I want to just quickly do before we do a bit of shadows is quote a bit of puppet history. So I'm quoting a very famous puppeteer, because this relates to lockdown quarantine at the moment. Because in this country, we have a real problem. There was a famous puppeteer called Sergei Abratsov, Russian puppeteer, and one of the most famous puppeteers in the 20th century. But his fan was Joseph Stalin. And that's one of the reasons why puppetry is so well established in the Eastern Europe and in kind of like Soviet bloc countries that they were. But one thing that his show did, which was kind of interesting, had these very simple, what he was a glove puppeteer. And I know there's glove puppetry around the world, but he did these very simple puppets that were just like naked puppets and just hands. But the end of the show was this, which was a kind of, you know, it was a love story between two. Finally, they embraced. And this for me is like such a strong image at the moment, because we're all with touch because of what's going on in terms of the quarantine. So that's a little Bratsov, the Soviet puppeteer. Like Karen, I've lying around, but the other thing that's happening to my university at the moment, we're currently in a massive stack of puppets of kind of like at work in my studio, and I can't get on campus. So that's my excuse for today. So having a really weird bunch of, including ones like Karen's ones, which don't really have any jobs, but this one, and this one's only ever been a demonstration puppet because it doesn't have the back of his head, but I kind of quite like. And since lockdown, other types of puppets made from junk again. This is old light bulbs make very good puppet heads. Just trying to think, the one that I've got that I can show you that are kind of, these ones are kind of very old, that just out in different places. This was a street puppet. I was very inspired actually, which is very simple, and I like the idea of rod puppets, quick and easy to make, but also they move very, very well. They have a really immediate way of moving. And then finally, this penguin was this character, was this bear that was in one of my shows many, many years. And we like these kind of puppets. These puppets work quite nicely in videos and in the way that you think about kind of like children's TV shows and things like that. He's very in the early 90s, Penguin O'Malley. So he has a sort of special place. So that's why he lives at home with me. Right. So what I really want to look at today, because I just thought, as to what, I mean, Karen and I seem to have a kind of, we share a bit sort of, and recent, you know, in the last few years, actually through meeting Matt and through other people, we've did, and it's been, you know, that's been really, really good. But we sort of have similar training backgrounds in British organisations like Little Angel Theatre and things like that. But what I, a little bit of shadow puppetry, which may have some technical things going on. So we'll see how we get on, and if you some feedback and seeing whether it's going to go, because I'm going to move the camera so you can see what I'm doing and switch the light and show you how this works. One reason I like shadow puppetry is it's very groups to do. So this morning, because all of my puppets are locked down, essentially, I made a whole range of shadow puppets. It's very easy and quick to make, so that you can make them from simple hard and just articulated joints. And I ran out of these split pins using other things to make these puppets. And they don't look, you know, they're very quite basic when you see them, when they're just cutouts, they're simple cutouts of card. You put them in a shadow, they start to get really interesting. So in a way, I've done the worst thing that a puppeteer should do. I've shown you all the kind of ways that I'm making before I do it. So let me show you another image. One of the other sorts of puppets that I made this morning I really like, because sometimes I'm not always the greatest of drafts person, or I can't draw that well. So I don't know if you see that, but that's a transparency that's just from some packaging. So from some packaging, this character, and I'll show you that in shadow form in a minute, and it just makes a very, very simple puppet there. And this one I traced from, there's a famous film, Sin City. That's just traced from Sin City. So you can really nice details in these shadow forms by just tracing onto these transparencies. And these are literally taken from packaging that I found. And as you can see, that's just packaging as well. So they're all really quick and immediate. Let me just go through all of my little shadow puppets I've got today. Another simple one. Feathers are really nice for shadows as well, because they kind of show up quite well. So without further ado, I'm going to change things around a little bit. If it goes completely wrong, Matt or anybody, just shout out and say, Matt, what's going on? We don't know what's going on. My light source today is a mobile phone, which I think everybody pretty much has now. Mobile phones have the best torches for shadow puppetry if you're doing it in a small space today. So it's kind of what I like about this as well is because we have so many mobile phones now with really good torches on them. They're exactly the right kind of density of light. I tried an angle poise this morning from my upstairs room, and it's still not good enough. These are really, really sharp light. So anyway, I'll switch the light on. That's not the most exciting bit. And then I'll show you the setup. And then when we go to dark, I'll see whether some of these images are working. Try not to get bemused by the... So as you can see the setup here, there's my computer. Here's the screen. And that's where the shadow is going to go. And there's where it is. And all on the table at home, which is how I've been able to do most of puppetry, including the project that I was talking about at the start, which was the project that happened in Nairobi, and talking about how you can think about discussing that issue. How are we seeing that? Is that actually, there's sort of some light bouncing around a little bit. You can see my hand coming in.
Yeah, it's looking all right.
Yeah. So one thing about mobile phones, can you see the parrot?
Yeah, I'd say possibly it's a bit too direct. The light coming back. You might want to put it at a slight angle so we can see the shadow a bit better, because the light's shining straight out.
The light actually can change us, but it can kind of almost become quite cinematic, like the light is taking you on a journey. And that's just using a mobile phone. I'll introduce a puppet now, so you can get a sense of that. So this chap,
nope.
That's the worst thing a puppeteer can do. Drop his. I did that in front of one of the most famous puppeteers years ago, and justified. So we have this kind of, I don't know. I think he's sort of almost like.
Yeah, can't quite see him too well there, Matt.
Yeah, I think the light is too direct.
Yeah, move the light slightly away from. Matt, can you hear us?
I think because the light is bouncing. Let's see if we can just move him a little bit. You get a sense of his.
I think you might need to move the light a little bit to a different angle, Matt.
All right. How are you doing? Is that still too bright?
So that it becomes the sun.
Yeah. It's the sun, you see. It's just the middle of the day here. Plugged down the darkest room. You can see that. You can see the shadow line there. We'll we doing with that one?
Yeah, he's pretty visible.
So this one is articulated simply. This was the first one that I showed you there. It's kind of, you've got to play around with light. One thing about this kind of incredibly experimental, but one thing when I was project, one of the images that we did that was very strange, and this might work, it might be strange here because of the daylight coming in, but we used this idea off from COVID and we represented it in this sort of very simple kind of book style. So the character started coughing. And this strange kind of representation of a bubble of kind of infection was coming out in the pandemic.
Just starting to see the purple dots.
This was a simple puppet, but it represented an idea. So a lot of people were just talking about the idea of how you could represent something. This became a way of representing something very, very clearly in a graphic kind of style, in a simplistic style. I'm just going to move me parrots. Me bird. The other thing that you can shadow puppetry is create spaces, create sets very simply, and also you can create a sense of a journey very clearly in a, I guess, in a sort of filmic style. So if this was the city would move and the character can move through the city. But also complex shapes with kind of cutouts like this thing that I've just put on there also really work really well in shadow. And animals are fun. And again, very simple puppets. But with groups, if you work with children, they can draw a shape really easily onto card. And then that can be translated into a shadow puppet very quickly, just by cutting out. And the bold way that that shape appears is one of the delights, I think, of shadow puppetry as a form. Kind of like it has these kind of bold outlines. I'm going to find me birdies, one more me birdies. I'm not obsessed with birds, but you can see how the feathers on that are quite good fun. Is that coming through, the colours of those feathers?
A little bit, yeah. You might want to take the buildings out of the way so we can see the bird better. Yeah. Bird can move the buildings. Yeah.
The bird intervenes by knocking everything out.
There we go.
Cool.
Yeah. The feathers are nice. Yeah.
Really nice.
And then,
all right, Matt.
After the events of COVID, we had this chappie here, which I really like. I don't know why. This is one I made this morning. I really like this puppet. But you see, by moving the light, you get some strange effects. Almost, you know, sometimes they ghost these images and sometimes they kind of do things you're not in control of. So one thing I like about puppetry with shadows is the experimentation. So before I finish and we run out of time, if I can go to again, as anybody who's got a mobile phone, we've got like 30 seconds to grab your mobile phone and a piece of paper. And what I want you to do, I'll just move my camera so you can see what I'm doing now. Woo! You've got a piece of paper. You're going to get the piece of paper. You're going to get the light behind the piece of paper, so it might be a little bit of playing around, and then you're just going to create a little shadow, and just put your shadows into this Zoom call, and we'll have a mosaic of shadow puppetry. It doesn't have to be a puppet; it can just be an object. So everyone just have a little play. If you've got a phone or you've got a light source.
My Jane is really struggling with that.
How do you hold the paper?
All those years of training, Matt, in puppetry, what's going on?
I've had no training in puppetry at all.
Nice. So and what I like about this on Zoom is you can create images really, really quickly. And one thing I've been finding since like, is ways of working remotely that are effective on Zoom, that are not kind of, that are not just relying on the usual things that we do with puppetry. And actually what I'm finding, a lot of puppeteers and a lot of puppetry has solved a lot of sort of problems, because one thing we've got here is an already wonderful frame and play box. So a lot of puppetry relies on having a really good frame, having a really good box. So having that on Zoom, you can play around with the frame and use that as part of what you're doing. And that actually becomes quite a good thing to work with. And I'm finding more and more, there's lots of puppets that are using forms that are playing and creating these little micro theatre spaces that tell stories. One that I love at the moment, because it's got a really funny name, is Lambe Lambe. Has anybody heard of Lambe Lambe? It's licky. It translates roughly as licky licky, and it's a one-to-one performance in a box, in a cardboard box. So I think that's. I don't want to go on too long chatting, Max. I just want to do the show and tell thing of the shadow thing. I'm just going to put my light on so you can see me a bit better. But quite happy to talk. But I'm just conscious. I've just noticed the time.
Well, does anybody want to ask any questions? I mean, Matt, I know I'm kind of interested to hear a bit more about what you did with Kenya.
Right.
See, Lookman's got a hand up.
This is very interactive. At the early stage of my dabbling into puppetry, I tried also to venture into the shadow puppets, and I find it a bit technical. Perhaps because of my environment, then I was in Nigeria, and then my audience, which is very important. Because for me, my audience are always in schools, right? And if you have to do shadow puppets, I mean, you need some form of a technical preparation. Do you understand? And mostly in Nigeria, we have problem with electricity, with power, all right? And then for the audience to see through. And then there's also the once you pre-plan this, let's say light goes off, before you are able to get everything back to, performance mode and all that, things will rejig. And, your audience won't just wait for you to get that on, because they're very spontaneous. They respond to you. They boo you instantly. They cheer you on if it is good. That's the kind of audience. So I was discouraged to go more into shadow puppets. All right. And like, if you are a puppeteer like Karen, if you are a solo puppeteer, if you have that sort of, challenges in terms of getting the tech ready and all that, and anything goes on, it's just too cumbersome. And so I want to ask, what's your kind of audience like? Is it the formal theater setting, or you go to their schools to perform, or what? Because this will inform your kind of shadow puppets.
I find one thing about shadow puppetry is experimental. In a sense, it's got to be. You need a bit of time to play, and everybody. There seems to be a lot of, and this is my mother-in-law's old phone, is a lot of mobile with really good light sources on. So I often think they're better for shadow puppetry because they're really kind of focused light. even though today on Zoom it was a bit, because I've got daylight coming in. But the other thing, the solution to that is use daylight, is actually use the light from the I've seen some lovely work like that just uses daylight. I mean, you know, obviously the daylight changes, which is also quite beautiful in itself. But I think there is lots of, you know, the idea of making theatre with shadows, I think is, you know, ancient as we know. It's kind of a practice, and it's also not a European practice as well. It's a, you know, global thing. And I think, yeah, it doesn't mean you have, you know, sometimes it might be, you know, we should do shows at night, but I think that's a problem. You can't do that with school kids because it's a daytime. One thing I know that some puppeteers that I met years ago did is they explored science and the science of physics through shadow puppetry. So actually shadow puppetry, when it's applied in a particular way, can kind of like be kind of mind-blowing to people, because you say to a group, okay, well, what do you think light? I'll be like, oh, it's this thing that just is there, you know, and it just comes on and goes off, you know what I mean? So, well, but light is a thing, light is material, photons exist. And if we start thinking like that, okay, oh, that's a thing, that's actually does something, you know, and it starts to kind of do that for, you know, young people and those sorts of ways of thinking. But I know what you mean technically, you know, with a setup like that. Some of the shadow puppetry that I did was when I was in a prison environment, actually. And one of the reasons was, because it has a film-like quality to it, it drew audiences in a way that was kind of different from like, here's the show, bam, let's do, you know, get the puppets out and let's do the sort of thing like that. And that the things that, those were adults as well. It kind of drew the audience into those spaces. And I think, yeah, I think the technical side of it can be sometimes a little bit, you know, a bit annoying. But I've just got used to this way of kind of working with like small little bits of kit, putting a sheet up and doing the shadows in that kind of way. And I think when we did the project last year, when I did the ACT project in Makuru in Nairobi, when we did out of it as like, oh, they were like, we've never done that before. It's really, really interesting. And because it was able to tell stories in almost like a comic book form, and also in that project, a comic book was, so there was a comic that was made as well as the puppetry. And what I love in this kind of practice is say if I would work with a comic book artist, I would work with, you know, one thing I love in this form is all that that way of working with different people and kind of going, oh, what do you know, how do we do that? And sometimes that's why the you know, shadow puppet thing kind of fitted really nicely into that project. You know, that image of the was just like spot on. It was like, I
take it that you're not a solo performer, no?
Me? Well, no, I'm an academic. I'm a senior lecturer at university, so I don't tour theatre. I teach puppetry at the university.
Oh, I see. Okay, yeah, all right.
I write articles about it and theorize about it and think about it. But funnily enough, because of lockdown, I've made more puppets than I have for years, because quite a few of my puppets are from when I was touring in the early 90s. And now something I naturally was drawn to make me happy, to give me joy. So I would kind of like, you know, in the morning, oh, what's Dad doing? Oh, Dad's making, you know, he's just making another one of his crazy. So,
yeah.
And I think that's part of the thing of the projects as well that we did last year in Kenya, was the fact that what I said was that there's a great joy in making puppets, and that joy is part of it, and that's sometimes the most important part for me, and not the idea that a bit of information is passed on. Is actually the pleasure of making puppets and just, you know, losing yourself in images, losing yourself in the poetics of it, is one of the beauties of it. And that's kind of enough sometimes, you know, because I think quite a lot of puppetry that I've done in, you know, for certain reasons, but I think there's a need to also just enjoy, you know, like Karen's work, I just enjoy looking at those images. I just enjoy looking at those things. Matt,
I'm conscious of the fact we're starting to lose people who need to go. So maybe we could have Dotun on if Dotun's still there and Dotun's prepared to present. And then if there's anybody wants to see if anybody's still around. By then. But
video,
there?
Contact stuff in the chat, Matt. So
yeah, there's been a few contacts in the chat box, and we'll save that document. A lot of people are interested in building on this and towards turning it into, you know, some kind of international collaboration, which would be brilliant.
Yeah, love to. I mean, that's really kind of what one of the great things about that project that I talk about in Kenya was the fact that I didn't do it. Some of the videos I've just put on are, you know, videos of training. I'd rather just pass on the skills now for me because I'm, you know, but I think, you know, and it's important I always work with someone like Karen, who's a puppeteer, you know, is an artist making the work, touring the work if I'm working on projects. Anyway, I'll shut up because I can talk a lot because I'm an academic.
Yeah. Well, you know, I've got the same problem. But thank you very much, Matt. Illuminating. I like to call that's an illuminating presentation because of the light. So Dotun, with no further ado, Dotun Osunsanya, can you turn on your microphone? And perhaps Jerry, you could introduce Dotun for us and tell us a bit about him. Plus I see, oh yes, Jerry's got an applause emoji up there. Karen's got a thumbs up. My kids are going to think we're such nerds.
Very good. So very quickly, I'd like to welcome Dotun Osunsanya. Like I said earlier on, he was, until very recently, a director at the National Council for Arts and Culture, where he retired from civil public service, as we call it here, and a fellow of the National Association of Nigerian Theatre Art Practitioner. You know, though I have known about puppetry in Nigeria for a while, and I know he's one of those at the forefront of it, I'm just getting to know my Lookman is also one today, interestingly. I was in Iran at the Fajr Festival in 2019 when a question was posed to me, and I quickly chatted him on phone to say, look they're asking me what I don't know right here in Iran, and then he was able to provide answer, you know, to me. So having him here today, I know that he has a wealth of experience as far as Nigerian puppetry in Nigerian, you know, art scene is, and so I have the pleasure of inviting Dotun Osunsanya to speak to us. You are still muted, sir. You are still muted. Okay, here we go.
Okay, am I on now?
Yes.
Hello?
You're on.
Okay.
Oh. The audio issue is still there. Oh. The audio is shaky and yeah.
We could hear you better, Dotun, when the camera was off. Maybe try turning the camera off.
Okay, maybe yeah, I guess so. Maybe to turn off the camera.
Now.
Are you and that? Are you talking? Now I seem together.
Turn off the camera.
Yeah, I think it's better now.
Oh yes, now we can hear you.
Without the camera, it's fine.
Okay, good. Okay, so I'll just keep the camera off then.
Yeah.
Like I said, after studying, since I was already involved in cultural administration, unfortunately, I got sucked up by cultural administration. But there was some fortunate part of it. I was involved in the organization of the national. I was able to insert things that engendered some puppetry. And I got to know a few high points in Nigeria. Every state is one of the high points where puppetry is played. But the kind of puppetry that is done in Benue State is life-size puppetry. It's almost more like Muppet. And there's a very good work on it by Professor Haye. It is a very thriving one. There's a whole festival dedicated to it. I don't know how it's featured in the last few years. But there are individual puppeteers across the country. There's one puppeteer who plays with marionettes. He is very good, but he's hardly ever permanently in Nigeria. He actually moves across West Africa. He uses it not just as puppet shows. He uses it to attract audience for sales, but he uses marionettes. Personally, I got introduced into puppetry very early. And I'm mentioning this because of the last speaker and the use of the lights. I don't know who they are. I've not had any other contact with them, but they did something that was ingenious. They were actually playing shadow puppet, and they used candlelight with a carton. If I remember well, I think it's a carton of pig milk. They cut the back and put transparent there, and then it using candlelight, which was, I've not seen it done since then. Then in the extreme north, where Boko Haram is actually very active now, there used to be a traditional form of puppetry there called Dao Dao. Unfortunately, even before this problem, the puppetry form there died, and it is practiced in that area. In fact, the person decided to abandon the practice because, according to him, it was against Islamic practice. And I don't think there are any inheritors of that particular practice. Because I was personally involved in administration, I only retired about 4 years ago. I'm still cooling down now. Maybe I may decide to come back. I want to come like Lookman, who have gone into this. I can't remember having seen any of his shows, but I think I've heard of them. Shadow puppet is popular in Nigeria, but also popular are rod puppets and glove puppets. So many people have approached me in recent times, but I very frankly have not taken a decision. I tried to invite some of my colleagues to this meeting. Unfortunately, it's like we're unable to make it. I'm also not involved in the national festival right now, but I'm going to keep talking to those people. Those pockets of practitioners in Nigeria, if we can syndicate them, we might be able to revive puppetry in Nigeria again. The problem that Lookman mentioned, the problem of light, was one of my major challenges when I came back into this country. In fact, I convinced my boss to get that. But even for us, light was so terribly unsteady that after you have gathered artists, just a third of, into the time of your schedule for practice, NEPA will do its usual thing. The light will go off, and you really don't have resources to continue practice. Like I said, I've not done much of practice. Maybe now that I'm a bit free, I may consider it. But there are many people who are practitioners who are actually practicing, like the young man I mentioned, who went. It's just that they are not in a theater group. Most of them are solo performers, and they don't do puppetry as puppetry in itself, but as aid to other things, maybe like telling stories to attract customers for trade purposes. So that's it basically. Thank you.
Thank you, Dotun. Sorry, Jerry?
So I was just going to say that's a very quick overview of the state of puppetry art in Nigeria. And, you know, when this decision was taken that puppetry should be our focus for this edition of the Nigeria Northern Ireland Cultural Exchange Program, personally, I was excited. Dr. Philip Akoji, who was the first person to mention puppetry, I remember last month, was here from the beginning, but is no longer here. Because for me, I think that a lot of people have been asking questions. Like I mentioned, after my Iranian Faj Festival trip, and I posted some of the puppetry performances I got to see, a lot of people were asking questions. Why is Nigeria not there? Even that Chinelo, that you know, Living Green, is one puppetry enthusiast that I know and has been asking every now and then, are you not going to do anything? Are you not going to do a puppet show? I don't know. It's not my thing. I don't know nothing about, you know, puppetry theater. And so we felt like this would be a very good way to stimulate interest. This will be a very good way to bring people together and, you know, begin to look at especially what sort of collaboration can happen, whether in terms of capacity development or in terms of project, which I am very excited is already happening on this platform. As Lookman Sanusi has just said to Karen, don't worry, you will come to Nigeria. And of course, I am sure looking forward to that. And he knows we can work together to ensure that, you know, that happens, because there is the need to revitalize the puppetry art in Nigeria. And so thank you so very much. If there are questions for him, please let's take questions or comments on that. Yeah. I posted the Kwaga,
Jerry.
I posted a link earlier of the Kwaga puppetry performance. Which we can get to see. Kwahi, okay, is that Kwahi puppetry performance? Yeah.
Jerry, I just had an idea. Jerry,
yes.
I just had an idea.
Okay.
So we were sort of thrown a bit by the unfortunate confusion over the time, etc.
Of the time, yeah.
Plus also, most of the time we've previously had maybe one or two guests talking.
Yes.
And I think this is absolutely fascinating, and it sounds like there's a lot more that we could be hearing about it.
Yeah.
I would suggest, you know, usually what we do at the end is we ask everybody, you know, would you like to do this again? And if so, what kind of topic?
Yeah.
Perhaps we would like to do puppetry again.
And we
exactly. Could get on with a bit more time and maybe hopefully in a place where he'll have sort of better connection, and maybe Lookman as well, if he'd be interested. Get Dotun and Lookman. So today we've had the kind of Irish and British end of it. Maybe we could do another session where we focus more on the Nigerian, and maybe so the man from Kenya and the lady from South Africa, whose names have slipped from my mind just now. We could have another session where we get more time to see the work coming from Nigeria and Kenya and South Africa and talk about it, and internationally as well. I don't know. What do you think?
Very good. I think that's the way to go. Yeah, there should be a part 2 to this.
Yeah. So let's do part 2. Part 2. Yeah. Part 2.
Yes. Yeah. So we should.
Am I still on?
Yeah. If that would be all right with everybody here. Well, look, yeah. Matt's there is. But yeah, I mean, not that I want to sort of cut anybody off. If anybody have a question for Dotun or to make a comment, that would be brilliant.
Well, I just want to quickly recap so that we actually get the real perspective. Well, from my own perspective, I think the problem with puppetry in Nigeria is that it's been known to be a traditional thing. Oh, let me just decline the call. Sorry about that. The call was trying to come in. It's a traditional Dequahil, theater is practiced mostly in the Middle Belt in Jos, So it's a traditional kind of, but puppetry as it is practiced all over the world is also, yes, it's a means of entertainment and educating the young people. But in Nigeria, it's still in its crude form, if I want to use that, and it's not very popular as in terms of you have the hand puppets, you know, glove puppet or rod puppet or shadow puppet and all of that. It's not as practiced. Although, I mean, I'm a generation of Sesame Street, you know, most of us grew up with Sesame Street and the rest of it. And then you find the people who practice puppetry in Nigeria are very few. For the artists, they want, you know, a quick means to, you know, they want to make their money, quickly perform on, you know, live on the stage and all that. But with puppetry, you are behind, well, most of the time you're behind puppets, you know, the puppets take more prominence. And so they find it, because when I started, as much as it's time consuming, you know, a lot of creativity goes into it, energy and all of that. But I enjoyed it. And then again, the audience, your immediate audience is a young people, is the children. And in Nigeria, they still don't, you know, I think I'm bold to say that children's theater is not as popular as audience theater in Nigeria, as it is practiced here in the UK or Ireland and whatnot. Yeah. I went into it. I went into schools, and you know, it's very profiting, but people don't know that. They just feel, oh, children's theater, and then they seem to dismiss you if you say, oh.
Hello? Yeah, I guess it's still the calls interrupting. Hello? Okay, I guess while we wait for him to return, can you hear me? Can anyone hear me? Oh dear.